Welcome back to the deep dive. Yeah, that time of year, right? Back to school professional development.
Oh, yeah, that annual parade.
Totally. It kind of unfurls like this well-worn script,
Yeah.
always, under the fluorescent hum of those multi-purpose rooms.
Definitely gets you in the mood.
Right. Most teachers, they pick something practical. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something to, like, shave minutes off grading or navigate the latest legislative curveball.
Makes sense. Survival, basically.
But nestled in that menu between AP Chem and AP Gov, there was AP Poetry Analysis.
Interesting choice, especially when you think about where our source material comes from for this deep dive.
Exactly. It's from a poet and educator who identifies as an autistic gestalt language processor, or GLP.
And they signed up for this session, not even an AP teacher, right? Just drawn to it.
Yeah, out of this deep, almost inherited connection to poetry. Curious, but also, I think, a little wary about how poetry gets handled in these spaces built for, metrics and outcomes.
Right, where everything needs to be measurable.
So our mission today is really to unpack that perspective. What happens when we try to standardize the meaning of a poem?
What do we gain from that?
And maybe more importantly, what do we lose? The core tension here is pretty fundamental, I think. Do we encounter a poem as like a living thing? Or do we just reduce it to a specimen for dissection?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Experiencing something organic versus just cataloging its parts.
And the central insight, really, that comes through is how standardized analysis, even when it's aiming for clarity, can kind of inadvertently sanitize the life right out of the art.
Yeah, it can strip away the very thing that makes it resonate.
That really crystallizes the tension. And there's this perfect story about Leonard Cohen that illustrates it.
Oh, the Leonard Cohen story, yes.
The amazing poet, musician, just master craftsman.
Gravelly voice and all.
So our source recounts how Cohen was on the radio. He reads an entire poem, finishes.
And the interviewer asks the inevitable question.
What does the poem mean?
Right. The million-dollar question.
And Cohen just pauses. Silence. Like long enough to make you really wonder what deep answer is coming.
You lean in, waiting for the profound insight.
And then he just reads the poem again.
Just reads it again. No explanation.
Nothing. Just the poem. As it was.
Which, for many people, might seem, mystical. Or maybe just evasive.
Totally. Like he's dodging the question. But our source explains that for a Gestalt language processor, it's crystal clear. Can you walk us through that? Why does that resonate so much for a GLP?
Sure. So a Gestalt language processor, a GLP, they tend to acquire language in bigger chunks, right? Not word by word, but whole phrases, sentences, even with the original intonation.
Okay, like capturing the whole vibe, not just the words.
Exactly. The meaning is deeply tied to that whole auditory and experiential package. The rhythm, the context, the feeling. It's very much like how a poem works,
Ah, I see the connection.
So asking a GLP or asking Cohen in that moment to strip down the poem into bullet points, it's like asking for the scent of rain without the actual rain.
You can't separate them.
You can't. Poetry, in this view, isn't a puzzle you solve piece by piece. It's more like a room you step into. You inhabit it for a bit, let your senses adjust.
You let the meaning emerge rather than extracting it.
Precisely. And forcing an analysis too soon or too clinically, that changes the experience itself. It's like pulling a cake out of the oven too early.
Right, it collapses. So Cohen wasn't refusing to answer.
No, it was an act of fidelity, of loyalty to the poem. He was basically saying, here it is. This is the meaning. If you want to understand, stay here with it longer.
He understood that the meaning and the expression were inseparable.
You don't paraphrase a bird's song, right? You listen. You don't summarize the smell of your grandmother's kitchen. You just breathe it in. It's about letting the poem live in its full form.
Which brings us right back to that professional development session.
Yeah, the contrast.
Because on one hand, the facilitator sounded, incredibly effective for the job, preparing kids for a high-stakes AP exam.
Experienced, clear, organized, gave them a tool for the test.
Exactly. Delivered what the system demands. A reliable method for timed conditions. But then, you hear, our source felt their heart tear quietly in two.
That's powerful.
Is there a way to bridge that?
Yeah.
Can you have the rigor in the soul, or is this just an inherent conflict?
Well, that's the crux of it, isn't it? What popped up on the screen was this thing called a Poetry Analytical Pre-Essay template.
Sounds formal.
Oh, it was. Not just a guide, like a formal apparatus built for the AP machine. Specific slots for theme, devices, effect, structure, tone, The whole deal.
Designed to distill everything into neat, exam-ready sentences.
Exactly. Highly effective for that specific purpose, passing the test. But for our source, as a poet and a GLP, it felt like taking something alive.
And just breaking it down.
Yeah, breaking it down into functional, clinical parts. They use this phrase, it is the kind of clean you get from bleaching a surface sanitized to the point that nothing living remains.
Wow, that's stark. You can almost feel that. Reducing it from a field of meaning to a specimen under glass. What does that feel like, especially for a mind processing in gestalts?
Well, for a mind that works in gestalts, meaning isn't just component parts you add up, it emerges from the interplay, right? The rhythm, the sound, the image, the silence, how they all braid together.
Okay.
So when you pull those strands apart, like this template forces you to do, you don't just rearrange them, you risk losing the whole rope, the integrity of the thing.
It's like preparing it for an autopsy rather than an encounter.
Precisely, extracting the meaning in a way that kills the very thing you're trying to understand.
So just to give everyone a sense of this structure, the pre-C template, it demands this very specific, almost mechanical format.
Right.
Like 4 sentences, right?
4 tightly defined sentences. Sentence 1, theme. Sentence 2, devices and effects. 3, structure. 4, speaker and tone.
It's a formula. Built for speed and replication, not really for like a personal fluid engagement.
Definitely not. And our source actually gave an example, a top score pre-C, applied to their own poem, Expat from Varinsland.
Oh, wow. How did that read?
Well, the first sentence went, in Expat from Varinsland, Jaime Hoerricks reveals that living authentically as an autistic trans femme often means existing as a perpetual foreigner in a world ruled by having rather than being.
Okay, I can see how that fits the theme slot, but you can almost hear the author's reaction.
Exactly. They wrote, no, 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 stop. Because, sure, the précis gives you the bones, maybe.
But it misses the marrow, the breath, the warmth.
Yes. The poem is the meaning. It's a place, a climate, not just a code you can crack and summarize on a note card.
Right, not something you carry out in your pocket.
And maybe this is a good moment. To truly understand, we should probably invite you, the listener, to sit with the poem itself.
Good idea.
We'll read just the first stanza now to give you a taste, but we really recommend finding Expat from Varinsland, maybe in the show notes or online, and just spending some quiet time with it after this. Let the words find their own way in. Feel where they land.
Okay, here's the beginning of Expat from Varinsland. I am from a land not drawn on maps, Varinsland, where the air hums with quiet and words grow slowly like moss. Here I exist as being, not pressed into the shape of having. They ask, where were you born? But the question slips, falling between the cracks of years I cannot remember.
Even just from that, you can feel its weight, can't you? It dives into these deep themes, identity, foreignness, living as being, not having.
This unmappable Varinsland. It feels like this space where just existing is enough.
Exactly. And it highlights that struggle, trying to communicate your authentic self in a world that always wants quantifiable answers, neat labels.
And like the author says, the poem itself tells you what it means, not in neat sentences, but in how it changes you as you live with it.
Which brings us to another crucial point the source makes. This idea that there's a kind of violence in over-explanation.
Even when it's masked as clarity.
Especially then. It's similar, they suggest, to how autistic communication sometimes gets sort of repackaged for neurotypical understanding, stripped of its natural contour.
Okay, yeah. What's left might be technically accurate, maybe easier, but it's not authentic anymore.
Right. It loses something vital.
You know, that really hits home. I remember being in school, loving a book, and then being told to find the theme. Suddenly it felt like work, like a chore. Is that related?
I think that's absolutely part of it. The irony here is almost, unbearable, isn't it? Poetry, this art form built on resonance, ambiguity, feeling, gets treated like a multiple-choice question in disguise.
The poem becomes a specimen, and the student, a lab tech.
Yeah. Trained to identify the right labels. Instead of sitting with the poem, you learn to interrogate it, demand its secrets on your terms, in your language.
And the cost of that. It's profound for any reader, really, but maybe especially for neurodivergent students.
Right. Definitely. It's the loss of permission to engage personally, to say, this makes me feel, or this reminds me of, without needing to justify it with literary terms immediately.
That doorway into the work, the one that starts with just feeling something.
It gets quietly bricked over. Because there are no points on the rubric for wonder.
Right, or for the discipline of living with a question.
Or for just letting the work change you. The AP frame, it doesn't recognize that slow bloom of meaning that only comes after you've carried a poem around with you, you know? Let it seep in.
But our source insists there is another way, a different kind of literacy, one that starts not with the scalpel, but with stepping inside.
Yes, exactly.
Can you give us an example? How does this different literacy look in practice?
Well, think about what our source calls the ADHD deep dive. And just for clarity, ADHD refers to folks who are both autistic and have ADHD.
Okay. Often leading to that intense hyper-focus on things that grab them.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So picture this. You're watching a show, right? A character just catches you. Not just your attention, but something deeper. You pause it.
Grab the phone.
Yep, and the excavation begins. Like, maybe an actor like Regina Nava in Los Gringo Hunters. She plays an autistic character with such precision, such tenderness, you just have to know more. Is she autistic herself?
And down the rabbit hole you go.
Headlong into interviews, backstory, production notes, driven purely by that connection, not by an assignment. Or maybe Ella Maisie Purvis in Patience. The way she holds a scene until you feel the edges of overwhelm in your own body.
You pause, not to escape it, but because you want to stay in that feeling, understand it more.
Yes, you want to live in that resonance.
That sounds so much more alive than being handed some, I don't know, flat poem and told to find the enjambment.
Exactly. It's such a contrast. And it's probably why our source finds this, like, quiet delight in poems that are maybe a bit messy, a bit too human for the standard syllabus, like Burns the Fornicator.
Too alive to fit neatly into the box.
Maybe. But the principle holds for any poem. Start with the lived encounter. Start with being moved, being caught by something. Then follow the threads out.
So you can still teach craft, naming the devices and techniques.
Oh, absolutely. You can name the enjambment, the rhyme, the metaphors, but you do it in service to the whole experience, not as a replacement for it.
You start with the feeling, the connection.
The moment you realize, okay, something here matters to me, and then you ask, how did the poet create this? What choices led to this feeling, this effect?
So this ADHD GLP way, this deep dive method, it's kind of an act of honor, in a way.
I think so. It starts with feeling that pull, and then you follow every thread because you trust that the poem is the whole meaning.
The craft is just how the poet shaped that hole. It becomes a window into it, not a cage to contain it.
Beautifully put. A window, not a cage. So if someone were to ask our author, point blank, what does your poem, Expat from Varensland, mean?
They'd do a Cohen.
They'd read it again. Not to be difficult, but because that poem is the attempt to answer. It's the act of pulling all those gestalts, memories, feelings, atmospheres, fragments, into its own unique shape.
Because for a gestalt language processor, the meaning just can't be separated from the poem's sound, its pace, its images, even its silences.
They aren't just decoration on the meaning. They are the meaning. If you try to strip them away and just hand over the essence in prose,
You've already lost it.
you've lost it. Leonard Cohen knew that. The most faithful answer was just. The poem itself, unchanged, it's an invitation. Step inside, feel the air, notice the light.
The poem will tell you what it means.
But not like a quiz answer. It tells you in the language of the body. The way a certain chord can just summon grief you can't name, or a smell throws you back to a childhood street.
So as you think about all this, maybe consider the quiet rebellion in just letting a poem or any art be enough. How do you approach understanding? In art, sure, but maybe in life too. Do you always feel the need to solve things, categorize them?
Or can you allow yourself to just live alongside something complex, trusting that meaning will emerge in its own time, in that language of the body?
It's maybe about shifting from that land of having, where you need to explain, possess the knowledge,
To the land of being where you experience, you allow understanding to just unfold.
It's about recognizing that sometimes maybe the most honest thing is just to stay in that land of being together and let the art be enough.